Hello there. Welcome to Sleepy Nights. This is Kevin. Tonight, we have a collection of 3 fantasy tales. But first, try and make yourself comfortable wherever you might be. Just take a moment. Find a position where you can fully rest. Maybe letting your head sink a little softer. Perhaps you have some blankets, and with them you're making a cocoon of warmth and safety around you, which would be the perfect setting for tonight's adventure. Now I'd like you to take a deep, slow breath in through your nose. When you breathe out, just feel the day's activities begin to fade away, like mist clearing from a mountain valley. And starting from your toes, imagine a wave of calm moving very slowly upward, starting at your little toes, through your feet, your ankles, your calves, thighs, your hips, all the way up your back. Each part becoming completely at rest. Let this peaceful feeling flow into your chest, your arms, your neck, and finally, your head. As usual, there's no need to concentrate too deeply to the story. Just let my voice carry you along as we drift into sleep. Now, as your breathing becomes steady and your mind quietens down, prepare to join me in a story of courage, wisdom, and unexpected friendship. The torches in the great hall of Castle Whitestone guttered in a sudden draught as the massive oak doors swung open. Sir Gareth strode forward, his armor gleaming in the firelight, the sound of his boots echoing across the stone floor. At the far end, King Edmund sat upon his throne, his face a mask of restrained grief. Your Majesty, Gareth said, dropping to one knee, his head bowed. I came as soon as I received your summons. The king studied the night before him. Sir Gareth of the Western Marches was not the most renowned of his knights, nor the most politically connected. But he was steadfast, honest, And most importantly, he knew the Black Fang Mountains better than any man alive. "Rise, Sir Gareth," the king commanded, his voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. "You know why I've summoned you." Gareth stood, meeting the king's gaze directly. "Your Majesty, I've only heard rumors." The king's hands tightened on the arms of his throne. "My son, Prince Rowan, has been missing for 3 moons now. The royal hunting party was attacked. Many good men died." His voice remained steady, but his eyes betrayed his pain. "My scouts have found evidence," he signaled, and a servant stepped forward, bearing a small wooden box. Inside lay a child's silver pendant, blackened as if by fire. Beside it rested something far more disturbing, an enormous scale that gleamed like burnished copper. "A lost dragon," Gareth breathed, recognizing the scale from the ancient texts he'd studied as a squire. "Yes," King Edmund confirmed, his voice hard with hatred. "We believed them extinct for a century, but this beast has returned, and it has taken my son." His voice broke before he mastered himself. "I've chosen you, Sir Gareth, because you know these mountains. Your father mapped their passes before you were born." Gareth's mind raced. Dragons were creatures of legend, monsters from his childhood tales. Yet, the evidence lay before him, undeniable. "I will find the prince, my king," he vowed, "and I will end this lost dragon." King Edmund's eyes flashed with grim satisfaction. "Bring me my son, and the dragon's head, Sir Gareth, and you shall have lands and titles beyond what any knight might dream." But as Gareth left the great hall, it was not dreams of reward that filled his thoughts, but the impossibility of his task. To slay a legend and rescue a prince. Stories were full of such quests, but few had happy endings. It was 5 days later. Sir Gareth stood at the base of a cliff face, high in the Black Fang Mountains. The journey had tested even his considerable skill. Narrow ledges, treacherous winds, unexpected snowfall despite the spring season. But the signs had grown clearer with each passing day. Enormous claw marks scouring the stone, charred remains of mountain goats, and most telling of all, a half-melted knight's dagger bearing the royal crest. Now before him gaped a cave entrance, its mouth wide enough to admit 3 mounted knights riding abreast. Smoke-blackened rocks surrounded the opening, and the smell of sulphur hung in the air. Gareth drew his sword, its familiar weight comforting in his hand. The enchanted blade, blessed by the temple priests and forged with mountain iron, was said to be capable of piercing dragon scales. Whether the old tales were true, he would soon discover. With shield raised, he entered the darkness, a flickering torch held high in his left hand. The passage sloped downward immediately, the floor worn smooth as glass. Signs of the dragon's habitation were everywhere. Claw marks scoring the stone walls, the lingering smell of smoke, piles of bones from its meals. But as he descended deeper, Gareth noticed something odd. Scratches in the cave wall that formed pictures. A drawing of a dragon, what appeared to be a small figure with a crown. The passage opened suddenly into an enormous cavern, its ceiling lost in darkness high above. And there, coiled atop a mound of scattered items, some glittering like treasure, others oddly domestic, waited the last dragon of Alberon. The creature was magnificent even in the dim light. Copper scales gleaming like newly minted coins. Wings folded against its massive body. Ancient eyes regarding Gareth with unmistakable intelligence. It rose to its full height, unfurling wings that stretched from one side of the cavern to the other, and released a roar that shook loose stones from the ceiling. "Dragon," Gareth shouted, his voice nearly lost in the creature's thunderous challenge. "Return the king's son." The dragon answered with a blast of flame that Gareth barely deflected with his shield. And so the battle erupted with terrifying intensity. The dragon's fire forced Gareth to dive behind a rock formation. His sword strikes glanced off hardened scales. Both combatants circled, looking for an advantage in the uneven terrain of the cavern floor. Gareth's shoulder burned where claws had found a gap in his armor. The dragon favored one wing, where Gareth's blade had struck true. Neither could gain decisive advantage. Just as Gareth readied himself for a final, desperate charge, a small figure darted between them. "Stop. Please. Stop." A boy of perhaps 7 years, dressed in rough garments, stood with arms outstretched between the knight and the dragon. Despite his wild appearance, the golden circlet still visible beneath tangled hair confirmed what Gareth already knew. This was Prince Rowan. "Please don't hurt her," the prince cried. "Please. She saved me." Both knight and dragon froze, the boy's intervention creating an impossible moment of truce. "Your Highness," Gareth said, lowering his sword slightly, "I've come to return you to your father." "No." The boy backed toward the dragon, who lowered her massive head protectively. "My father doesn't understand. No one does." In the flickering torchlight, Gareth could see that the prince appeared unharmed. Indeed, he seemed healthy and unafraid, despite living in the presence of the kingdom's most feared creature. She could have killed me many times, Prince Rowan continued, his small hand resting on the dragon's scaled neck with casual familiarity. But she saved me instead. The bandits killed everyone else. I was lost in the forest for days. When I fell in the snow, I thought I would die. The dragon made a sound unlike anything Gareth had ever heard before. A low rumble that seemed almost gentle, protective. She brought me here, kept me warm, found food for me, the prince continued. You see, she's my friend, Sir Knight. She's the last of her kind, all alone in these mountains. Gareth lowered his sword completely, the impossible truth before him challenging everything he'd been told about dragons. Your father grieves for you, Your Highness. He believes you've taken against your will. I wasn't at first, the boy admitted. But I choose to stay now. Father would only have her killed. The dragon watched Gareth with ancient, intelligent eyes. Eyes that seemed to understand exactly what hung in the balance. Your Highness, Gareth said finally. I cannot force you to return against your will. But neither can I leave you here forever. Your father is the king, and you are his only heir. What if... Prince Rowan began hesitantly. What if you told my father what you've seen? That she protected me? That you know she's the last of her kind? Gareth shook his head. No. Your father's hatred of dragons runs deep, Your Highness. The wars of your grandfather's time left scars that haven't yet healed. The boy's face fell, but then brightened with sudden inspiration. Then don't tell him you found me just yet. Return with some proof that I'm alive and well. Bring him this. he removed the royal signet ring he wore on a leather cord around his neck. Tell him you've tracked me to these mountains, but need more time. And that will give us more time. Time. Time for what, Your Highness? Time to prepare, the boy said, with unexpected wisdom. I need to show my father that she deserves to live. The dragons aren't the monsters he believes them to be. Gareth studied the earnest face of the prince. The protective stance of the dragon, and the evidence of their peaceful cohabitation around the cavern. Everything he had been taught told him to complete his mission. Slay the dragon, return the prince. But what he saw before him challenged those certainties. I'll return to your father with the ring, Gareth said at last. But Your Highness, we will need more than time. We will need a plan. The great hall fell silent as Gareth approached the throne. His armor still bearing the marks of his mountain journey. King Edmund leaned forward, eyes flaring with desperate hope. Sir Gareth, you have news of my son? Gareth knelt, drawing forth the signet ring. Your Majesty, I bring proof the prince still lives. I've tracked him to the eastern face of the Black Fang Mountains. The king took the ring with trembling hands. And the dragon. I've seen signs of the creature, Gareth answered truthfully. But I require more time and supplies to complete my mission. The mountains are treacherous, and I believe caution will serve better than haste. King Edmund studied the knight's face. This is just a ring. You've seen my son, spoken with him. I've seen evidence he moves freely and he lives, Gareth replied, choosing his words very carefully. I believe with more time I can ensure his safe return. After a long moment, the king nodded. 2 weeks, Sir Gareth. Take what men and supplies you may need. Your Majesty, with respect, this mission requires stealth rather than force. I would go alone, as I have been. The king's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. 2 weeks, not a day more. And as Gareth left the great hall, he felt the weight of another pair of eyes upon him. Sir Darian, the king's champion, watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Gareth had never trusted the man, too hungry for glory, too quick to volunteer for missions that would bring him recognition. For now, though, Gareth had more immediate concerns. Your father has given us 2 weeks, Gareth explained to Prince Rowan upon his return to the cave. 2 weeks, no more. The prince sat cross-legged beside the dragon he called Ember, sharing a meal of roasted mountain hare. The great beast had accepted Gareth's presence with wary tolerance, seeming to understand that the night now posed no immediate threat. Then we must be ready, Rowan said. I've thought about what to do. Father needs to meet Ember himself, to see that she's gentle and wise. Gareth shook his head. Your father would never come alone to such a meeting. He would bring knights, archers. It would be a trap, Your Highness. Then we must convince him before he comes, the prince insisted. Show him that the dragons were never the monsters our stories claim. And so, over the following days, an unlikely alliance formed between the knight, the prince, and the dragon. While Ember hunted in the high peaks, Gareth and Rowan explored deeper into the cave system. And what they discovered changed everything Gareth thought he knew about dragons. In a chamber far from the main cavern, ancient drawings covered the walls. Not childish scratches, but sophisticated images, showing dragons and humans working together, farming, building, even healing. Dragons breathing controlled flame to forge metal. Humans riding dragons through skies filled with stars. These must be thousands of years old, Gareth marveled, his torch illuminating page after page of history no human had seen for centuries. Even more remarkable were the scrolls they found, preserved in stone containers. Writings in an ancient human dialect that Gareth could partially decipher from his studies. They spoke of a time when dragons and humans lived in harmony, before wars and misunderstandings drove them apart. This changes everything, Gareth said. These scrolls, these drawings, they prove dragons weren't always our enemies. The prince nodded eagerly. Now, we just need to convince Father. Gareth began preparing the prince for the inevitable meeting with his father. They practiced what Rowan would say, how he would explain his time with Ember. The dragon, for her part, seemed to understand the gravity of their plan, allowing Rowan to demonstrate how she would behave in the king's presence. Meanwhile, Gareth created packages of evidence, carefully selected scrolls, drawings copied from the cave walls, even a small chest of dragon scales Ember had shed naturally. Each night, he would leave these where the king's scouts might find them, gradually preparing the ground for the truth. But fate rarely allows for perfect plans. On the 10th day, as Gareth returned from placing another evidence package, he spotted movement on the path below. Armor glinting in the afternoon sun. Sir Darian, leading a small party of knights, ascending the mountain. Gareth raced back to the cave, his heart pounding. We've been discovered, he told Rowan and Ember. The king's champion approaches with men. How? The prince asked, his face pale. We've been so careful. Darian must have grown suspicious. He's always resented me. Gareth checked his sword. He was jealous that I received this job. You should hide deeper in the cave while I intercept them. But the prince shook his head. No. If they found us, they'll keep coming. It's time for my plan. Ready or not. Your Highness, I am still your prince, Rowan said firmly. And I say we stand our ground. Ember will not harm them unless they attack first. I will speak to Sir Darian. Make him understand. Against better judgment, Gareth agreed. They positioned themselves at the cave entrance, the prince in front, Gareth at his side, Ember visible but not threatening within the shadow of the cave mouth. When Sir Darian's party rounded the final bend in the path and saw them, chaos erupted. Knights drew swords, archers knocked arrows, and Darian himself shouted in triumph. Stand aside, Sir Gareth. The prince is bewitched by the beast. I am not bewitched, Rowan called back. Ember saved me. She's been protecting me. Lies spread by the creature's magic, Darian spat. Your father sent me to finish what the traitor Sir Gareth would not. He raised his sword. Men, prepare to... You will listen to me. The prince's voice rang with authority that belied his years. I am Rowan, son of Edmund, heir to the throne of Alberon, and I command you to lower your weapons. Perhaps it was the shock of hearing such command from a child, or perhaps some vestige of loyalty to the royal bloodline. But the knights hesitated. Darian's sword remained high, but the others lowered their weapons slightly. The dragon could have killed me many times, Rowan continued, stepping forward. Instead, she saved me from death in the snow, fed me, protected me. Everything my father believes about dragons is wrong. They were once our allies, not our enemies. Darian sneered. Childish fantasy. Stand aside, Your Highness. Let us do our duty. Your duty is to me, Rowan replied. And I say you will not harm this dragon. And for a tense moment. No one moved. Then, Darian signaled his men. Take the prince, kill the beast, and the traitor. As the knights advanced, Ember moved with unexpected speed, placing herself between the threat and Prince Rowan. Gareth drew his sword, standing firm beside her. The prince refused to move, his small figure dwarfed by the confrontation around him. But before the first blow could fall, a horn blast echoed across the mountainside. All eyes turned to see a much larger force ascending the path, and at its head, the unmistakable figure of King Edmund himself. "Father," Rowan cried. Darian turned, surprised but quickly composing himself. "Your Majesty, we found the prince. The dragon has him in its thrall, and Sir Gareth has betrayed you." "Silence," the king commanded, his eyes fixed on his son, standing unharmed before a creature from a nightmare. "Silence all. Rowan, are you well?" "I am, Father," the prince called back. "Please, call off your men. Let me explain." The king raised his hand, halting his forces. He dismounted, approaching slowly, his hand on his sword. "Explain quickly, my son. That beast stands behind you, ready to strike." "She has never hurt me," Rowan said. "She saved me when I was lost in the mountains." "Everything you believe about dragons is wrong, Father." The boy gestured to Gareth. "Show him what we found." Gareth stepped forward cautiously, producing the ancient scrolls and drawings they had discovered. "Your Majesty, these were hidden deep in the cave. They show a different history than the one we've been taught. Dragons and humans once lived in peace." The king barely glanced at the evidence, his eyes never leaving the dragon. "A clever deception. Dragons are killers, boy. They destroyed entire villages in your grandfather's time. Because we hunted them first, Rowan cried. We drove them from their lands, killed their young. This is the last dragon, Father. The very last. And she chose mercy over vengeance when she found me. King Edmund's face hardened. Stand aside, Rowan. I'll not ask again. I will not, the prince replied, tears streaming down his face. If you want to kill her, you'll have to kill me first. The king blanched. Bewitchment, just as Darian said. Archers. A dozen bows raised in unison. Gareth moved to shield the prince, but Rowan stood firm, his arms outstretched before Ember. Father, please. What happened next would later be told and retold throughout the kingdom. As the king raised his hand to give the order to fire, a whistling sound cut through the air. From the ridge above, arrows flew, not from the king's men, but from hidden positions in the rocks. Bandits, dozens of them, had used the confrontation as cover to surround the royal party. The same bandits, Gareth realized with sudden clarity, who had attacked the royal hunting party months before. The first volley felled 3 of the king's knights. The second was aimed directly at King Edmund himself. Without hesitation, Ember the dragon launched from her position, her massive wings carrying her forward with incredible speed. She placed her body between the king and the incoming arrows, roaring in pain as they struck her scales. Father, Rowan cried, running to the king. For a frozen moment, King Edmund stared in disbelief at the dragon that had just saved his life. Then, battle erupted around them as bandits swarmed down from the ridges. Knights fought desperately against the unexpected attack. Darian proved his worth, his sword claiming 3 bandits in quick succession. Gareth found himself fighting back to back with men who had moments before been prepared to kill him. But it was Ember who turned the tide. The dragon rose into the air despite her wounds, raining fire upon the bandit positions, careful to avoid the king's men. Her massive tail swept attackers from the narrow path. Her claws tore through those who came too close. When the last bandit fell, an uneasy quiet descended upon the mountainside. Ember landed heavily near the cave entrance, blood flowing from a dozen arrow wounds. Rowan ran to her side, tears flowing freely now. "Help her," he begged his father. "Please." King Edmund stood motionless, his worldview visibly crumbling as he processed what he had witnessed. The dragon he had come to kill had saved his life, protected his son, fought alongside his knights. His eyes met Gareth's. "You knew." It wasn't a question. I discovered the truth, Your Majesty," Gareth replied. "As you have today." The king approached the wounded dragon slowly, his hand no longer on his sword. Ember watched him with pain-clouded eyes, but made no threatening move. "You saved my son," the king said quietly. "And now, you've saved me as well." He knelt beside the great creature, touching one of the wounds gently. "Master Darian, fetch the royal physician quickly." Darian stared in disbelief. "Your Majesty, you cannot mean to..." "I said quickly," the king roared, his authority brooking no argument. As the physician worked to remove arrows and treat Ember's wounds, the king sat with his son, listening at last to the full story of his rescue. Gareth showed him the ancient scrolls and drawings, explaining their significance. "All this time," King Edmund said finally, "our histories were wrong, or deliberately falsified." "Not entirely, Father," Rowan said. "There were wars between humans and dragons, terrible ones. But they weren't always our enemies." He looked at Ember with unbridled affection. "And they don't have to be in the future." The king was silent for a long moment, weighing centuries of belief against the evidence of his own eyes. "Well, What would you have me do, my son? Let her live in peace, Rowan said immediately. Establish these mountains as a sanctuary, and let me visit her. He hesitated. I know I must return to the castle, to my duties. But Ember is my friend. I won't abandon her. King Edmund looked to Gareth. And you, Sir Knight, what would you counsel? Gareth considered carefully. A new beginning, Your Majesty. A chance to right ancient wrongs. Perhaps one day, if there are more dragons, to rebuild what was lost between our kinds. Three days later, when Ember's wounds had begun to heal, a remarkable procession descended from the mountains. At its head rode King Edmund with Prince Rowan before him on his saddle. Behind them came Sir Gareth, carrying the ancient dragon scrolls. And most remarkably of all, walking with careful dignity despite her injuries, came Ember. The people of the nearest village fled indoors, the sight of a living dragon approaching with their king. But as days passed and Ember remained peaceful, curiosity overcame fear. Children were the first to approach, marveling at her scales and gentle demeanor. The adults followed more cautiously. True to his word, King Edmund established the Black Fang Mountains as royal sanctuary. No dragon would be hunted there, no scales harvested, no eggs stolen. In time, watchtowers were built along the borders, manned by a new order of knights, dedicated to protecting the sanctuary and its sole inhabitant. Sir Gareth, having proven both his courage and wisdom, was appointed first knight of the Dragon Guard. His duty was not only to protect Ember, but to study the ancient scrolls and drawings, to recover the lost knowledge of human-dragon cooperation. Prince Rowan divided his time between royal duties at the castle and visits to his dragon friend. Under Gareth's guidance, he too studied the ancient knowledge, preparing for a day when he would rule, perhaps oversee a new era of peace between the species. And Ember, no longer the last dragon hiding in fear, took to the skies above her sanctuary, her copper scales gleaming in the sunlight. A living legend reborn from the shadows of myth. Many years later, when Prince Rowan had grown into a young man, and Sir Gareth's hair had begun to grey. Ember led them to a hidden chamber deep within her mountain home. There, nestled in a bed of heated stones, lay 3 large eggs, their shells gleaming with iridescent patterns. She wasn't the last after all, Gareth marveled, understanding at last why Ember had been so fiercely protective of her cave. Rowan placed a gentle hand on one egg, feeling the life stirring within. Not the last, he agreed. The first. Jars. Inside the medieval apothecary shop, dried herbs hung from weathered ceiling beams in neat bundles. A fire crackled beneath bubbling copper pots, filling the air with the sweet scent of healing brews. The apothecary worked methodically in the dim light, grinding leaves with his mortar and pestle, while checking each jar's contents against his inventory list. Rain pelted the leaded glass windows as evening settled over the town. He paused his work, listening to the steady drumming. The storm had grown fierce enough to drive most townspeople indoors, leaving the narrow streets empty, save for the occasional hurried vicar rushing past his shop. The shelves around him held countless glass vials, each labeled in his careful hand. Some contained common remedies: feverfew, chamomile, willow bark, while others held rarer substances, their contents gleaming mysteriously in the firelight. A collection of surgical tools lay clean and ready on a worn wooden table, their polished surfaces reflecting the warm glow of fat burning lamps. It was then that the door burst open with a gust of wind and rain. A knight staggered in, one hand pressed onto their side, the other steadying themselves against the doorframe. Water dripped from their armor onto the stone floor. "I require treatment," the knight said, voice muffled by their helmet. despite the obvious pain, they remained rigidly upright. The apothecary moved quickly to examine the wound. You'll need to remove some armor. The cut needs proper cleaning. No. The knight stepped back. Bind it as it is. I cannot remove the armor. That will lead to infection. At least let me. Just bind it. The knight insisted, tension clear in their voice. I can pay well. The apothecary frowned, but gathered his supplies. As he approached with clean bandages, he noticed the quality of the armor. Fine steel worked with subtle details that marked royal craftsmanship. Yet, there were no identifying marks or heraldry. An unusual combination that raised questions he knew better than to ask. Thunder rolled overhead as he began his work, the night remaining silent and still beneath his hands. The wound was deep, but clean, made by a sharp blade rather than a ragged weapon. Another detail that didn't match the typical tavern brawl or bandit attack. But that, too, he kept to himself. He worked carefully in the flickering light, cleaning what he could reach of the wound through gaps in the armor. The knight's breathing was measured but strained, each small movement carefully controlled. Despite their rigid posture, he could sense their growing weakness. Whatever had caused this wound, the knight was far from safety, and refusing proper treatment would only worsen their condition. As he reached for more bandages, a flash of lightning illuminated the shop. In that brief moment, he caught a glimpse of something that made him pause. A subtle pattern etched into the armor's shoulder plate. One he'd definitely seen before in the royal court's guard. But before he could process this detail, thunder crashed overhead, and the knight swayed slightly, their composed facade beginning to crack. The apothecary bent closer to examine the wound. frowning as he noticed an unusual purple tinge at its edges. His fingers froze. He knew that color, a telltale sign of nightshade-based poison, the kind used exclusively by royal assassins. The wound is poisoned, he said quietly, straightening up. You need the armor off. Now. The knight stiffened. Impossible. Just bind it, and he'll be dead by dawn. He moved to his shelves, quickly gathering ingredients. The poison's already spreading. See how your fingers tremble? The knight looked down at their gauntleted hand, now visibly shaking. You're certain? Purple-tipped nightshade. Royal court poison. I've seen it before. He began grinding herbs with swift, practiced movements. It'll reach your heart within hours, without treatment. Thunder crashed outside as the night seemed to wage an internal battle. Finally, they spoke, voice weaker than before. You cannot tell anyone what you see. I take confidences seriously, but we're wasting time. The knight struggled with the armor clasps, movements growing clumsy. The apothecary stepped forward to help, carefully removing the chest plate. The wound beneath was worse than he thought. Purple veins spreading outward like dark lightning. The helmet, he insisted, mixing herbs into a paste. The poison will affect your mind soon. I will need to check your eyes for... The knight swayed suddenly, catching themselves against a table. Vials rattled. No, I cannot. You can, and you must. He stepped closer, voice firm. Now. With trembling hands, the knight reached for their helmet. There was a moment of hesitation. Then, framing a face the apothecary had never thought to see again. Despite the years between then and now, he knew those eyes immediately. The princess held his gaze, chin lifted despite her obvious weakness. "Hello, Thomas," she said softly. He stared, words failing him. The girl he'd loved in secret, the princess who'd been his childhood friend until duty separated them. She stood before him now, poisoned and in disguise. "Your Highness," he managed finally, healer's instincts warring with shock. I... She stumbled then, poison taking its toll. He caught her automatically. Years of formality forgotten in urgency. She felt smaller without the armor, more like the girl he remembered. "Well," she said, attempting a weak smile, "this isn't quite how I imagined seeing you again." The poison's purple traces were spreading visibly now. Dark veins creeping up her neck. Her skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and her breathing grew more labored. Thomas pushed aside his shock and confusion, forcing himself to focus on the immediate threat. "We must act quickly," he said, guiding her to a chair. "The poison is spreading faster than I feared." He turned back to his workbench, hands moving swiftly among his supplies. "I need to know exactly when you were wounded." I think 2 hours ago," she managed, gripping the chair's arms as another wave of dizziness hit. 2 hours ago, just outside the city's walls. Thomas calculated quickly. 2 hours. The poison would reach her heart by dawn. Less time than he'd hoped, but enough if they worked quickly. He refused to consider the alternative. Not when he just found her again. Even under these impossible circumstances. Stay with me, he urged, reaching for his strongest antidote herbs. We have work to do. Thomas worked quickly at his bench, crushing herbs with shaking hands as he tried to process the reality before him. The Princess Elizabeth sat watching him, her beautiful face growing paler by the minute. I need to know what really happened, he said, keeping his voice steady. Still direct as ever. She managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Some things haven't changed. Many things have changed, Your Highness. He emphasized the title slightly, measuring dried foxglove with careful precision. Don't. She gripped the chair tighter as another wave of dizziness hit. Please, don't call me that. Not here. Not now. He added the foxglove to his mortar, grinding it perhaps harder than necessary. What should I call you then? The knight who burst into my shop? The princess who vanished from court without a word? The girl who... He stopped himself, focusing on the herbs. The girl who broke your heart. Her voice was quiet. We need to focus on the poison, he said firmly, though his hand had stilled. I'm seeing signs of nightshade, but there's something else. Something that's making it spread faster. She nodded, professional despite her growing weakness. Monkshood, probably. They've been experimenting with combinations. They? Who exactly is trying to kill you, Elizabeth? She met his gaze, and for a moment, he saw past the years of separation to the girl who used to sneak out of the castle gardens to meet him. Members of my court, my own court. I've been investigating corruption. Getting too close to the truth, apparently. Thomas turned back to his workbench, adding ingredients to a copper pot, heating over the fire. The familiar motions helped steady him. That explains the disguise. No, I never thought I'd see you in armor. You'd be surprised what I've learned to do. She watched him work, eyes growing unfocused. I needed to become more than just a princess in a tower. And now, you're a poisoned knight in an apothecary shop. He stirred the mixture, trying to keep his tone light despite his growing concern. The poison was now spreading faster. At least, she said softly. At least it brought me back to you. He nearly dropped his spoon. But before he could respond, she slumped forward, consciousness finally giving way to the poison's effects. Thomas caught her just before she hit the floor, his heart racing with both old feelings and new fear. The antidote wasn't ready, and time was running out. You need to stay awake, Thomas said, supporting Elizabeth as she stirred back to consciousness. The antidote requires multiple stages, and I need your help. She blinked, forcing her eyes to focus. Then tell me what to do. He helped her to the workbench, keeping one arm around her waist as she swayed. First, we need to counteract the nightshade. Then, the monk's hood. But something's making them work together unusually well. As he worked, combining ingredients with swift precision, Elizabeth watched his hands. You were always good at this. Even in the castle gardens, you knew every plant's purpose. The poison's affecting your mind, he said quietly. It's making you speak thoughts you'd usually keep hidden. Truth serum, she managed, a weak laugh. Of course. They are clever. She gripped the bench as another wave of dizziness hit. Though, perhaps not as clever as they think. Thomas added crushed belladonna berries to his mixture, trying to focus on the task rather than her words. This first stage needs to simmer for exactly 7 minutes. Count with me. It'll help keep you alert. Remember how we used to count stars in the garden? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Every night, until they called me back inside. He kept stirring, jaw tight. Elizabeth, I kept every letter you sent me, she continued, the truth serum loosening her tongue. Even after I had to stop replying. Father's orders, of course. A princess couldn't be seen corresponding with a commoner. His voice was sharp, but his hands remained steady as he measured out the next ingredients. With anyone who made me happy. She reached for a jar he needed. They were afraid I'd choose differently. Choose you. The mixture bubbled, giving off purple steam. Thomas added powdered herbs, counting under his breath. You made your choice clear enough. Did I? Her voice crackled. Or did I just do what was expected? What they told me would keep you safe. He paused, looking at her properly for the first time since the revelation. Keep me safe. They threatened to have you removed from the city. Permanently. The truth spilled out like water. I couldn't be the reason. Thomas's hands stilled on the mortar. So, you pushed me away instead. It seemed kinder than having you killed. She smiled bitterly. Though watching you leave nearly killed me anyway. The mixture turned a dangerous red. Thomas quickly added more herbs, forcing himself to focus. The monk's hood is reaching your heart. We need to work faster. She nodded, then stumbled. He caught her again, and for a moment, they were too close. Years of separation evaporating in shared breath. I never stopped, she whispered. The truth serum pulling words from her heart. Loving you, I mean. Thomas's hands tightened on her arms. Elizabeth, the poison is making me honest. Finally. She met his gaze steadily despite her weakness. Every time I heard news of your success, your healing work, I was so proud and so lonely. He helped her back to her chair, movements gentle despite his turmoil. We need to focus on saving your life. The past is right here. She interrupted. In this shop, with both of us finally speaking truth. The antidote bubbled, demanding attention. Thomas returned to his work, adding the final ingredients with trembling hands. If you survive this, what then? You're still a princess. I'm still the man I should have fought for. Her voice was growing weaker, but her words remained clear. Perhaps that's why I'm here. The poison brought me back to you, but the truth serum, that's showing me what I need to do next. The antidote turned a clear, bright blue. Thomas lifted it from the fire, heart pounding with more than just urgency. It's ready. But Elizabeth, the things you're saying are what I've wanted to say for years. She reached for the antidote with shaken hands. Now, are you going to help me live long enough to prove it? The final stage is complicated, Thomas said, holding the bright blue antidote. It requires blood from both of us. A binding agent. Elizabeth's eyes widened slightly. You mean blood magic? I wouldn't have thought you'd... I learned many things. After leaving, he replied, preparing a small knife. Some less orthodox than others. The candlelight cast dancing shadows as he carefully cut his palm, letting drops fall into the antidote. liquid hissed and darkened. "Your turn," he said softly, offering her the knife. Their fingers brushed as she took it. "The truth serum's getting stronger," she warned. "Whatever I say next, then perhaps we should work quickly." But he didn't move away as she made her cut. Their blood mixing in the potion. The antidote began to glow, casting their faces in ethereal light. "There are positions," she said suddenly, words rushing out. "At court, a royal physician is needed. Someone trusted. Someone who could work closely with the princess." Thomas still. "Elizabeth, I've watched you build this." She gestured at his shop. "Your independence, your reputation. I know what I'm asking you to give up." "Do you?" His voice was rough. "Last time I was at court was different. I was different." She gripped his arm, leaving a small, bloody handprint. "I'm not that scared girl anymore. I'm offering you a choice this time, not taking it away." The antidote pulsed between them, growing brighter. "And what of your court conspirators?" "They'll be dealt with. But I need..." She swayed slightly, poison still coursing through her. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows both medicine and truth." Thomas looked at their mixed blood and the glowing potion. Years of longing, warring with hard-earned wisdom. "The court nearly destroyed us once. Then help me change it." Her eyes were bright. "Not just as my physician, as my partner, The word hung unspoken between them as Thomas lifted the antidote. then we'll discuss terms. She took the vial with trembling hands. I mean every word. Poison or no poison. I know, he said softly. That's what terrifies me. The antidote glowed brighter as she drank. Their mingled blood carrying healing through her veins. The purple traces of poison began to fade from her skin. But the truth serum's effects intensified. I dream of you, she confessed, words spilling out. Dreams of what could have been, of what still could be. Thomas turned away, checking her pulse. Professional mask slipping. Elizabeth, please. No, listen. She caught his hand. Their blood still mingling. I'm offering you more than a position. I'm offering you a way to stay. To be near me without suspicion. To help me make real change. And if I refuse, then I'll respect your choice. But know this. I'm not leaving your life again. Position or no position, I'll find ways to see you, to work with you, to... He pressed a finger to her lips, stopping the flow of truth. The antidote needs time to work. Rest. But she gripped his wrist, moving his hand away. No more waiting. No more silence. The poison brought me here. But this truth serum is making me brave. I love you, Thomas. Still. Always. And I'm tired of pretending duty means denying my heart. Thunder crashed outside as Thomas struggled with her words, with the reality of this moment. The princess he'd loved and lost, now offering him everything he'd ever dreamed of. But at what cost? Your life at the court, he began carefully. Your responsibilities. well be easier with someone I trust at my side. She touched his face, her hand still bearing traces of their mingled blood. Someone who knows both healing and truth. Someone who can help me transform the court instead of being transformed by it. The antidote's glow was fading, but something else was growing stronger between them. Something that had survived years of separation, duty, and denial. Dawn comes soon, he said finally. The antidote will need watching through the night. She smiled, reading acceptance in his words. Then we have hours yet to plan our future. The storm raged outside, but inside the shop, truth and healing worked their magic as two hearts once torn apart found their way back to each other. Thomas hovered beside Elizabeth, watching the slow return of color to her cheeks. The antidote had finally purged the poison from her system. She breathed more easily now, though an exhausted tremor still ran through her limbs. That was close, he murmured, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. The feverish heat had receded, leaving her skin cool and clammy. Another hour, and I might have been too late. She managed a small, wry smile. Then I owe you my life, again. He shook his head. You should rest. But even as she tried to lean back, her eyes darted around the apothecary, settling on her discarded armor. I can't stay here. My enemies will think they've won if I don't return to court. Thomas exhaled. You nearly died tonight. Give yourself time. She pushed herself upright. Time is exactly what I don't have. There's corruption in the palace. People who'd stop at nothing to see me out of the picture for good. If I'm gone too long, they'll move unopposed. Her gaze flicked to him. That's why I need you. He looked away, torn. I left to avoid these very intrigues. You know that better than anyone. I do, she said softly. Finally, Thomas reached for her hand. If you return to court, you'll be in danger every moment. I'm in danger wherever I go. She met his eyes, determination etched on her face. All I can do is meet it head on, with help from someone I trust. The words set his heart pounding. What exactly do you want me to do? I'm offering you royal physician. I trust no one else with my health or the kingdom's. Thomas let out a long breath. The memory of the council's cold marble halls tightened his chest. That's a big step. You know how they'll talk if you bring me back. Then let them talk. The only thing I care about is whether you'll accept. He thought of the early years, when they were barely more than children, roaming the palace gardens, when he shouldn't have even been there. But he couldn't lose her again. Not like this. I'll do it. If it means I can keep you alive, and maybe root out the source of these attacks. I'll return to court. She squeezed his hand, a spark of that old warmth flaring between them. Thank you. I promise. This time, it'll be different. He helped her to her feet, and she tested her balance. The deep cut still twinged, but she stood taller with each breath, pressing one hand against fresh bandages. We need a plan. My father will demand answers about this wound. Thomas bent to retrieve her breastplate, carefully setting it on a table. We'll say you were ambushed outside the city walls. That's not far from the truth. As for the rest, we'll keep our findings to ourselves until we know who's behind the poison. She nodded, taking a measured step forward. Yes, we'll move quietly. Together. A faint pink light from the rising sun crept through the apothecary windows, illuminating the worn stone floor. The storm had blown over, leaving a hushed calm in its wake. Outside, a new day beckoned. Elizabeth met Thomas's gaze, and for a moment they were neither princess nor apothecary. but two souls who drifted apart and now stood on the brink of something new. She lifted her chin. "Shall we?" Thomas paused, letting the old fears and new hopes settle in his chest. Then he offered her a soft, resolute smile, the kind he once gave her as a boy. "Lead the way, Your Highness." And side by side, they stepped out into the dawn. Despite the challenges awaiting them, palace conspiracies, suspicious courtiers, and the burden of old wounds, they carried a shared resolve to face it all together. For the first time in years, Thomas felt not only the pull of duty, but the promise of what might be if they dared to claim it. Mira Chen held the glass vessel up to the light, rotating it slowly to check for imperfections. The piece was flawless, or at least it should have been. Agnes Winter would probably find some invisible flaw, just like the last 5 times. The old woman's standards went beyond exacting into the realm of impossible. The studio's electric kiln hummed behind her, its orange glow the only light besides her work lamp. Outside, the light rain tapped against the industrial windows of her converted warehouse space. Bills and final notices lay scattered across her desk. Three months behind on rent, 2 overdue utility payments. She needed this commission. She checked the temperature log again. Each piece for Agnes required specific heating and cooling patterns, complicated sequences that made no sense for simple decorative vessels. This one had cooled in precise 5-degree increments, each stage timed to the minute. The glass itself was a custom mix, heavy on pure silica, with trace elements Agnes had provided herself. Even the shape was peculiar. A bottle with subtle curves that seemed to twist in on themselves. creating depths that shouldn't be possible in clear glass. Mira wrapped the piece carefully in silk, trying not to think about the 200 hours of work that would likely end in another rejection. Her other clients, the ones who actually paid, had started taking their business elsewhere as she focused on Agnes's impossible project. But something about these pieces called to her. The way the light caught the curves, a strange weight of them in her hands, the way they seemed to ring at frequencies just below hearing when struck. Tomorrow evening, Agnes would examine the vessel and find some invisible flaw. But tonight, in the quiet hours of her slowly failing studio, Mira allowed herself to believe she'd finally created something perfect. Agnes Winter arrived precisely at 11:45 p.m., exactly like every other review session. She wore her usual attire, a charcoal wool coat that seemed too heavy for the season, and silver-rimmed glasses that caught the studio's harsh light. Without speaking, she removed her gloves one finger at a time and held out her hands for the vessel. Mira unwrapped the piece, trying to quell the familiar flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Agnes held it up to each of the studio's lights in turn, rotating it with horrific but surprisingly steady fingers. Then she did something new. She pulled a small glass vial from her coat pocket and held it next to Mira's piece. For a moment, Mira could have sworn she saw something move inside Agnes's vial. A swirl of light or smoke that couldn't have been there. But when she blinked, the vial appeared empty. "The ratio is wrong," Agnes said finally. "The curves create interference patterns at the neck." She set Mira's piece down with devastating gentleness. "It would leak." "Leak?" Mira couldn't keep the frustration from her voice. "It's a solid piece of glass. There's nothing to leak." Agnes's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She reached into her large leather bag and withdrew another vessel, one of her own. Observe the difference. Mira held Agnes's piece up to the light. At first glance, it seemed identical to the one she'd made. But as she turned it, the glass seemed to shift, creating depths that defied the physical dimensions of the vessel. And there, in its heart, she caught a glimpse of something that made her nearly drop the piece. A swirl of color that moved like a thought trying to form. When she looked again, it was just glass. Agnes packed away both vessels with practiced efficiency. "Try again," she said, heading for the door. "Focus on the resonance patterns this time." She paused. "And Miss Chen, don't work past midnight. Some things require specific hours." Mira watched through the windows as Agnes walked away, her form almost disappearing in the light rain. The old woman turned down an alley that Mira knew led nowhere. Without really deciding to, Mira grabbed her coat. After months of rejections and impossible specifications, she was finally going to find out what Agnes Winter really wanted these vessels for. Agnes moved with surprising speed through the rain-slicked streets, her heels clicking against centuries-old cobblestones. Mira followed at a distance, ducking into doorways wherever Agnes looked back. They wound deeper into the old quarter, where medieval buildings leaned together overhead like conspirators sharing secrets. The route made no sense. Agnes turned down an alley, only to emerge from a different one that should have led elsewhere. She crossed the same square 3 times, but each crossing seemed to take them deeper into parts of the city Mira had never seen. The streets grew narrower, the buildings older, their windows glowing with warm light despite the hour. Just as Mira's feet began to ache, Agnes stopped at a shop wedged between a bookbinder's and what looked like a very old locksmith's. checked her watch. 11:58 p.m. The shop's windows were dark, displaying what seemed to be antique bottles and curiosities. As the church bells began to toll midnight, something changed. The bottles in the window began to glow, each with its own distinct light. One contained what looked like swirling golden smoke. Another held something that moved like water but shone like starlight. In a third, colors shifted and danced in patterns that made Mira's eyes water. They reminded her of something, a memory she couldn't quite grasp. Agnes withdrew a key that caught the light strangely, as if it were absorbing the glow from the bottles rather than reflecting it. Before she could unlock the door, she paused and spoke without turning around. "Well, Miss Chen, are you going to stand in the rain all night? Or would you like to learn what you've been really making?" Inside, the shop was larger than it should have been, given the buildings around it. Glass vessels of every size lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each one meticulously labeled with dates and names in elegant script. Some glowed softly, while others seemed to contain swirling shadows or moving lights. The air smelled of cedar and something else Mira couldn't identify. Like the moment before rain falls, or the silence after snow. "Your latest piece," Agnes said, removing it from her bag, "would have been perfect for containing dreams, except for the resonance flaw." She placed it beside a similar vessel on a workbench. The other vessel contained what looked like shifting purple smoke. "When the pattern is wrong, the dreams leak. They bleed into other dreams, other memories. The results can be unfortunate." Before Mira could respond, a gentle bell chimed. Agnes nodded as if she'd been expecting it. "Right on time. Watch, and please, remain quiet. An elderly man entered, led by a younger woman who had his same sharp grey eyes. Professor Bennett, Agnes greeted them, and Sarah, please, sit. She gestured to two worn leather chairs that looked as old as the building itself. "It's worse," Sarah said, helping her father sit. "He couldn't remember my children's names today." The professor smiled vaguely. "I remember everything in my field. Every theory, every equation. But the important things..." He trailed off, looking lost. Agnes selected an empty vessel from a high shelf. One that could have been Mira's work, but wasn't. "You understand the process, cannot restore what's already lost, but we can preserve what remains." The professor nodded. "My research, my life's work. Even if I forget everything else, that knowledge shouldn't be lost." He paused, looking at his daughter, and whatever memories of my family I have left. Agnes placed the vessel on a curious stand of brass and wood. She adjusted several small dials, then drew a silver chain from around her neck. At its end was what looked like a tuning fork, made of a material Mira didn't recognize. "Watch carefully, Miss Chen. This is what you've been preparing for." Agnes struck the fork. The note it produced wasn't quite sound. It was more like the idea of sound, or the memory of it. The vessel began to resonate in response. The air around the professor seemed to shimmer. What happened next defied explanation. Light, or something like it, began to flow from the professor into the vessel. It moved like liquid gold, carrying fragments of images Mira could almost see. Equations written in light. The faces of children shifting and aging. A lifetime of love and learning distilled into luminous threads. When it was done, Professor slept peacefully in his chair. The vessel on the stand contained what looked like starlight, captured in honey. Moving in complex patterns that reminded Mira of neurons firing. This, Agnes said quietly, is what we preserve. This is why the vessels must be perfect. After Sarah helped her sleeping father out to their waiting car, Agnes locked the shop's door and turned to Mira. The vessels around them pulsed gently, like heartbeats in glass. You have questions, Agnes said, moving behind an ancient wooden counter. Ask them while I prepare for the next client. Mira watched Agnes arrange delicate instruments. A strange tuning fork, brass calipers. How is this possible? Is it some kind of chemical process, or... She trailed off, not wanting to say the word magic aloud. Some members of our guild believe it's purely scientific, a matter of resonant frequencies and quantum mechanics. Agnes held up a vessel containing what looked like the northern lights in miniature. Others think we're working with something beyond science. After 60 years, I'm still not certain. She smiled slightly. That uncertainty is part of why we survived so long. People fear what they understand almost as much as what they don't. She set down her instruments, faced Mira directly. I sought you out because you have a gift. Your glass, it wants to contain memories. Even without proper training, your pieces resonate at the correct frequencies. But more importantly, you understand intention in craft. Each vessel must be created with its purpose in mind. To demonstrate, Agnes selected an empty vessel from a shelf. Watch the process again. This time, notice how the vessel responds before any memories enter it. She struck the tuning fork again. The vessel began to hum, not with sound, but with possibility, like a blank canvas vibrating with potential. The air thickened with that same pre-rain tension Mira had noticed earlier. The previous master glassblower died 3 months ago, Agnes said quietly. Without new vessels, we cannot help those who need us. And there will always be people who need us. Those running from memories too painful to bear. Those desperate to preserve what they're losing. Those who need to share experiences that cannot be put into words. Agnes held out the tuning fork. Would you like to learn? Mira reached for it, then hesitated. What exactly am I agreeing to? To become part of something older than science, newer than magic, and as necessary as memory itself. Agnes's eyes reflected the lights of countless captured moments. And perhaps to discover which of us is right about what we're really doing here. Two nights later, Mira stood before her kiln, watching the temperature gauge with intense focus. Agnes had given her precise instructions. Heat the glass to 1564 degrees, no more, no less. Cool it in stages timed to the phases of the moon. Shape it during the darkest hours, when the barrier between memory and matter grew thinnest. The vessel taking form beneath her hands was different from anything she'd crafted before. Its curves followed patterns Agnes had shown her. Spirals that appeared in nature, in shells, in the way water spiraled down drains. The glass mixture contained trace elements Agnes had provided. Silver dust, ground crystal, and something that looked like strands of starlight. Intention, Agnes reminded her, watching from the shadows of the studio. Think about what this vessel needs to hold. Your thoughts are more important than you believe. Tonight's client was a young dancer, Maria. who'd suffered a career-ending injury. She wanted to preserve the memory of her final perfect performance before the accident. The vessel needed to contain not just visual memories, the feeling of movement, the sensation of music flowing through muscle and bone. Mira shaped the glass with this in mind, creating subtle ripples that might capture the flow of dance. The glass responded differently than usual, almost as if it were collaborating with her, suggesting curves and angles she hadn't planned. At 3 a.m., they brought the finished vessel to Agnes's shop. Maria waited there, her crutches propped against one of the ancient chairs. When Agnes struck the tuning fork, the vessel sang in harmony with it. The memory flowed like liquid light, the movement of limbs in perfect grace, the soaring joy of a body in motion, the thunderous applause of a final bow. Beautiful work, Agnes said afterward, examining the filled vessel. Inside, fragments of memory danced in endless loops, flashes of stage lights, ribbons of movement, the ghost of music made visible. The vessel responds to the nature of the memory it needs to hold. You're learning quickly. But Mira barely heard the praise. She was watching Maria, who had fallen asleep in the chair, tears of relief on her cheeks. For the first time, she understood what Agnes had meant about necessity. Some memories were too precious to trust time alone. Tomorrow, Agnes said, we'll try something more challenging. Dreams are trickier than memories. They require different techniques. Mira's first dream vessel sat on Agnes's inspection table. Its glass walls rippling with subtle patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. Inside, golden light swirled in complex patterns. A child's recurring nightmare transformed into something peaceful. Her first completely successful piece. Agnes was about to comment when the shop's bell chimed. A well-dressed man entered. Expensive suit, gold watch. The kind of confidence that came from old money. But something about him felt wrong to Mira. The vessels on the shelves nearest him seemed to dim, as if shrinking from his presence. "Ah, Thomas." Agnes's voice had lost its warmth. "Another deposit so soon?" Thomas Weber smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The last one was insufficient." He placed a vessel on the counter. Inside, what should have been bright memory light had turned dull and gray. "I'll need something stronger this time. Perhaps a childhood memory, first love, something significant." Agnes took the vessel without touching Weber directly. "And what will you be offering in exchange?" "The usual arrangement. Take whatever you need." Weber's voice was hollow, like someone reading from a script they didn't understand. After he left, Mira examined the vessel he'd returned. The craftsmanship was crude. None of the precise patterns Agnes had taught her. Where did he get this? "There are others who work with memories and dreams," Agnes said grimly. "People who care more about profit than preservation. They create inferior vessels, ignore the proper processes." She held the vessel up to the light. "See the flaws? The memories inside are degrading. And somewhere, someone is missing a piece of themselves they can never get back." A week later, Mira and Agnes sat in the shop after hours, surrounded by vessels Weber had returned. Each contained memories that had turned sickly and grey, corrupted by improper containment. He finds people in desperate situations, Agnes explained, examining transaction records in a leather-bound book. Offers to buy their happiest memories for substantial sums, then exchanges his own darker ones through us. She looked up. But lately, he's been returning more frequently. The memories aren't lasting. The bell chimed. A young woman named Claire, one of Weber's sellers. She stumbled in, disoriented, her eyes unfocused. "Something's wrong," she said. "Everything's fading. Even things I didn't sell." Mira helped her to a chair, while Agnes retrieved Claire's vessel from the records room. Inside, what should have been the golden light of a wedding memory had turned almost black. Tendrils of darkness seeping through hairline cracks in the glass. "The inferior vessels are failing," Agnes said, "and the contaminated memories are affecting others they are never meant to touch." She held the vessel under a special lens. "These cracks, they're spreading." Over the next few hours, more of Weber's clients arrived, each showing similar symptoms. A businessman who couldn't remember his children's births, a musician who'd lost the memory of his first performance. Each had sold memories to Weber, who had stored them in substandard vessels, purchased from someone Agnes called the dealer. Mira examined each failed vessel, noticing the flaws in their construction. No proper cooling patterns, wrong glass mixture, curves that created destructive resonance patterns. Can't we just transfer the memories to proper vessels? It's not that simple, Agnes replied, showing her a vessel that was actively cracking. The memories have degraded inside, and the people who sold them. She gestured to the growing number of affected clients in the shop. Their other memories are becoming unstable too. Memory is a delicate web. Pull one strand, and others begin to unravel. The bell chimed again. This time, It was Weber himself, looking far worse than during his last visit. His eyes were vacant, his movements jerky. I need more. Everything's going dark. The black market dealer worked out of a basement workshop in the industrial district. Mira and Agnes found him surrounded by crude vessels, their contents flickering weakly in the dim light. He was younger than Mira expected, probably her age, with burn-scarred hands and desperate eyes. "You're ruining people," Agnes said without preamble. "Your vessels are destroying memories, corrupting dreams." "You think you can keep this technology to yourselves?" He gestured at his workbench. "People need this. Not everyone can afford your perfect vessels." "No," Mira stepped forward, examining his setup. "You don't understand. These patterns you're using, they create interference. The resonance tears the memories apart. Before he could respond, Agnes doubled over in pain. Mira caught her before she fell, felt the alarming frailty beneath her wool coat. The dealer actually moved to help, concern breaking through his defiance. "I'm fine." Agnes straightened slowly. Then to Mira. "I should have told you sooner. The doctor's given me 2 months, maybe less. That's why finding you was so urgent." The dealer's workshop fell silent, except for the discordant hum of his imperfect vessels. Finally he spoke. "I never meant. I just wanted to help people like Weber." "Weber's memories are disintegrating," Mira said, "along with everyone else's who used your vessel. We need to fix this." A sound at the door interrupted them. 3 elderly people entered, members of the Guild Council. "This is unacceptable," the first council member said. "Black market vessels, corrupted memories spreading through the city. Perhaps it's time to end this practice entirely. The old ways are too dangerous in modern times, another added. With Agnes ill and no properly trained successor, she has been training me, Mira interjected. And I think I know how to fix this. But I'll need his help. She nodded toward the dealer. He understands the underlying principles, even if his execution is flawed. Together we might be able to save the corrupted memories. The council members exchanged glances. You have until midnight tomorrow. Fix this, or we shut everything down permanently. Agnes gripped Mira's arm. Then we better get started. Weber's condition is deteriorating. Where his memories go, others might follow. The shop hummed with desperate energy as Mira worked. She converted the back room into an emergency workshop. Her kiln transported from her studio. The dealer, James, she learned, assisted. His knowledge of alternative techniques proving unexpectedly valuable. Dozens of corrupted vessels lined the tables, their contents growing darker by the hour. Each represented someone's precious memories, someone's dreams, all at risk of permanent destruction. The Guild Council watched from the corners, their presence adding to the pressure. The transfer has to be simultaneous, Mira explained, positioning new vessels she'd crafted. We'll use my containers, but James's resonance technique might be able to stabilize the memories during transfer. She looked at Agnes. We've never done this many at once. Agnes nodded grimly, adjusting her tuning fork. We've never had to. The bell chimed. Weber burst in, wild-eyed and disoriented. I can feel them disappearing. All of them. The good ones, the bad. Sit down, Mr. Weber, Agnes commanded. You are our template. What happens to your memories is happening to everyone else's, just slower. Mira struck the first tuning fork. The air filled with that familiar, not quiet sound as she began the transfer process. Light flowed between vessels, golden threads of joy, silver strands of peace, darker streams of pain and regret. Each memory had to be untangled from the others, sorted, restored. James monitored the resonance patterns while Agnes guided the flow of memories. Mira moved between vessels, making minute adjustments, her hands moving with practiced precision. Some memories nearly dissolved during transfer, requiring all her skill to stabilize them. Weber watched, transfixed, as his borrowed memories were properly preserved. "I just want to forget," he whispered, "to replace the bad memories with better ones." "Memory doesn't work that way. It isn't meant to work that way," Agnes said softly. "The dark ones have their purpose too. Lessons. They make the bright ones shine brighter." The clock struck 11. They had 1 hour left before the council's deadline. Mira's arms ached, her eyes burned, but she couldn't stop. Each vessel contained someone else's most precious moments, their deepest dreams. In her hands, they glowed with renewed strength, their light pure and steady once again. As midnight approached, the last memory settled into its new vessel, glowing with restored clarity. The shop filled with soft light from dozens of properly preserved memories and dreams, each one safe in Mira's carefully crafted containers. Weber sat quietly, his eyes clear for the first time in months, as his own memories, both light and dark, found their proper place in his mind. Other clients would come in over the next few days for similar restorations. But the immediate crisis had passed. The council members stepped forward, examining the vessels with critical eyes. "Remarkable work," the eldest said. "These are traditional forms, but the resonance structures, I've never seen anything quite like them. The combination of old and new techniques," another council member mused. "Perhaps it's time the guild evolved." Agnes smiled tiredly. "Which is exactly why I chose her." She turned to Mira. "You understand both the science and the mystery of what we do. You don't try to explain everything, but you also don't accept anything without question. As if to underscore her point, one of Mira's vessels began to glow with an impossible light. Color she had no words for, moving in patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. The sight filled her with questions she suspected could never be fully answered. Sometimes, Agnes said softly, watching the light dance, the best way to understand something is to accept that you never entirely will. The council formally offered Mira membership in the guild, and as she accepted, the vessels around them pulsed in harmony, their light neither purely physical nor entirely magical, but something beautifully, mysteriously in between.